Well, we of course have a long-standing duty that we've performed for decades to inspect the pipes, to make sure that PG&E is inspecting the pipes and operating the pipes in a safe manner. So that activity has gone on all along. After the explosion, we immediately directed PG&E to take some steps to make sure post-explosion that the system was safe. We directed them to reduce the pressure on that pipeline system by 20%, a very significant reduction. We ordered them to inspect all of their transmission lines in populated areas much more quickly than they normally would. There is an ongoing inspection program, but we wanted to get them out there to accelerate all that. We've directed them to look across their whole transmission system, their whole gas system, and evaluate it for places where remote cutoff valves, automatic cutoff valves might make sense, and report back to us. So we had an ongoing and very effective inspection program, and so did PG&E before the explosion. But something went wrong. There was an explosion, and we needed to get PG&E to secure the system even more than had been done before the explosion, and we're all in the middle of that now.
But 6 months ago, PG&E inspected this particular line, and they said it passed. What does that tell you?
Well, we don't know yet until the National Transportation Safety Board tells us what caused that accident. But I think we can all draw the conclusion that the aging infrastructure in this country and the fact that we've now had actually several pipeline bursts and several pipeline spills across the country in recent months are beginning to be suggestive that the former ways that we did things may not be good enough in an era when the infrastructure is aging. Some of these pipes are 50 years old, 60 years old, some even older than that.
Exactly. I mean, is this a case where it should have had, considering it was a high concentration area, that this particular pipeline should have had that kind of automatic shutoff valve rather than a manual shutoff valve?
We'll be considering that. We've also asked PG&E to evaluate its whole system to tell us where they've got automatic valves, where they've got remote valves, where they have manual valves now. And we'll be taking a look at that to decide where we think on PG&E's system and the other gas systems that we regulate. We have others in California as well, where it makes sense to put automatic valves, remote valves. A couple of conclusions you can draw from what happened in San Bruno. One is, had there been an automatic valve there, or had there been remotely operable valves, that fire would not have lasted, fed at transmission pressures for 90 minutes and then at lower pressures for even longer than that. So the amount of damage certainly would have been less. We don't know if that would have saved lives, but it certainly might have, and it also might have, probably likely would have significantly reduced the property damage. Now, it needs to be said that these valves are expensive. There's going to have to be a public policy debate about the value of having these automatic and remote valves compared to the expense of putting them in. But that's a debate now that we're fully underway at the PUC. We'll be looking at that pretty hard over the next few months.
Are the utilities going to say that if you want these automatic valves, that the customer is going to have to pay for them?
Well, likely. That's certainly the position that the utilities will start with. That's the standard position for a utility. They're funded by their rates from ratepayers. And that's why I say it's a public policy debate that we need to have about what sort of system people want and how much it's going to cost. And we're going to have to make some hard decisions about not doing other things if we decide to use ratepayer money to do the automatic valves and or the remotely operable valves.
It's an explosion that we saw consistent with a pipeline operating at 300 psi, or is there a concern that PG&E and other utilities are operating these pipelines at dangerously high pressures?
Well, PG&E was operating this particular pipeline at the rated pressure, at the pressure that the federal regulators permit and that we then permit using the federal standards. I think it is appropriate to ask the question of, with an aging infrastructure, do those pressures need to be reevaluated now, both at the federal level and also at the state level? We shouldn't be jumping to any conclusions yet about what caused this accident because we don't know. But an obvious place to be looking is the pressures. The NTSB has already announced, they announced publicly this week, something that we've known inside the investigation, which is that this pipe was rated to operate at about 375 pounds per square inch. And at the time of the rupture, it had gone up a little bit to about 386. So the NTSB has made that public now. We'll know as the NTSB makes public its findings over the next weeks and months exactly what happened there. Pigs, and especially the so-called smart pigs, the ones with advanced sensors, are the state-of-the-art in inspecting pipelines, and certainly any new pipelines that are built are made so that they can be inspected with pigs, which, as you know, Dan, they're robots. They're big machines. They're 10 feet, maybe longer than that are built to fill up the whole inside of the pipeline with sensors of various kinds. That's the state-of-the-art. No pipeline engineer would tell you that anything else is better. As I say, new pipelines are always made to be piggable. But some of these pipelines were built in the 40s, some were built in the 50s. Pigs weren't even invented until around 1970. The other kinds of inspections are sophisticated. They use sophisticated kinds of sensing. They are very good ways of inspecting. They're not as good as smart pigs.
One of the things that comes up particularly is that the industry, or at least the regulators, are very much dependent upon the American Petroleum Institute for coming up with their own standards for inspection. They rely on the industry very much to decide what the standard is. Is that one of those things that needs to be changed?
I think it's way too early to conclude anything like that. We at the state level adopt the federal rules, and it's the federal process that questions like that should be asked of.
But API, though, comes up with a lot of the standards that a lot of the regulators, even the state regulators, use. They have what they think is probably safe operating pressures, diameter, pressures of pipe, how much you can put through a pipe at the same time. This is the industry basically telling the regulator what they think is safe. Does that need to be changed?
The state of California adopts the federal standards, and any questions about how the federal standards get raised, you need to raise with the feds.
What do you think? Do you think, let me ask you this way, are the API standards good enough?
State of California adopts the federal regs, and you have questions about how the federal regs are developed. You got to take them up with the feds. I think it's totally appropriate now for the public to demand of government at all levels a review of pipeline safety, from design and installation to operation to inspection. I think it's totally appropriate for the public to demand that. I can assure the public in California we're at that 24/7, making sure that everything that we're doing about pipeline safety is securing that system so that it can be safe. And it should be said, by the way, it's been a very safe system since World War II.
California, I think, has like 12,000 miles of pipeline, and you inspect about 7%, or you have jurisdiction over 7%. 93% of that is not covered. Does California, for example, need more regulators, and does it need more authority to inspect the rest of pipelines that it currently can't look at?
Let's find out what caused this accident. Let's use the information that we get from the cause of the accident to take a hard look at whether all of the procedures we as regulators, the utilities as operators, the federal government as overseers have used to make sure that the system is safe. It will tell us what direction to go.
We were in Fremont yesterday, and we were talking with one of the battalion chiefs from Fremont Fire, and they were shocked to find out that the pipeline that they have in their area that runs beneath 880, the 880 audit mile through Irvington, was on PG&E's critical list. PG&E can't even tell them what critical means. They've told us that they don't think they're getting the information they need as first responders. Do you think first responders are getting the information they need from the utilities?
A week ago, at the urging of the PUC, PG&E made public its list of 100 pipeline projects. Now, it's not a critical list. It's not the list of pipelines that are dangerous. It's the internal planning tool that PG&E managers use and update every year to decide where to put their effort. If PG&E out doing its inspections finds something that's dangerous, they fix it right away. It doesn't go on any list. It gets fixed right away. So I think there's some misunderstanding about what this list of 100 projects is. Having said that, I think the public has a right to know about that planning tool that PG&E has, and whether a pipeline that PG&E is looking at for some future extra inspection or repair or replacement is near where they live. And I think it's a very good thing that PG&E has made all of that public. First responders should be looking at that. Folks at the local level should know where these facilities are. It's been a safe system since World War II, and we ought not to jump to conclusions about it based on one incident. We need to find out what happened in San Bruno.
You lost one of your staff members.
Yeah, we had a 21-year veteran of the PUC, a woman named Jackie Gregg, who happened to live within one of the 2 or 3 houses closest to the explosion, closest to the area that's devastated now. She and her 13-year-old daughter, Janessa, were killed. Fortunately, her husband and her older daughter were away at a school event that night, or would be talking about 4 members of the PUC family, likely. So we mourned Jackie. We found out about Jackie's disappearance and then likely death and then confirmed death at the same time that Thursday night and that Friday morning as we were ramping up our own investigation. So we're a professional organization. We're doing our job, but there's an element also of personal loss that brings it really to home.